Welcome to our informational webinar about a new grant opportunity called Local Food Makes Sense for Iowa Kids and Farmers. We're going to run through the details of the program and hold time for questions at the end. Again, please be sure your microphone is on mute and go ahead and use the chat box throughout the call if you have any tech issues or immediate questions about the grant project. And this call is being recorded. So after the webinar this morning, we will send a recording along with the slides out. My name is Chelsea Christ, and I'm a Farm to School Program Coordinator with Iowa State Extension and Outreach Farm Food and Enterprise Development Program. Myself, along with several other partners on the call today, are representatives of the Iowa Farm to School and Early Care Coalition. And we're hosting this grant opportunity through a Farm to ECE implementation grant that we recently received from Aspen. Our grant partners include Erin Olson with the Iowa Department of Public Health, Patty Delger with the Iowa Department of Education, Krista Smith with the Iowa Association for the Education of Young Children, Brittany Samuelson with State Public Policy Group, and Lisa Johnson with Luther College and the Northeast Iowa Food and Fitness Initiative. So we're going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the grant and then get into the details. So the purpose of the Local Food Makes Sense grant is twofold. One, we want to support growing capacity for local food procurement in Iowa early care and education. So through the grant, we'll provide funding and technical assistance to support providers to grow local procurement plans and partnerships at their sites. And two, we are piloting a model that provides state level grant funds to support Farm to ECE. And we have in total $43,000 that we'll be awarding through this project. All right, getting into the details of the program. So how it works. Grant funds will be used to purchase local foods. So grantees must spend their awarded grant amount on local produce, local protein, which means meat or meat alternatives, dairy, excluding milk, and grains grown in Iowa or within 30 miles of the border. And 50% of grant funding must be spent on local fruits and vegetables. So while those other categories are allowed, we're asking that at least 50% of your individual award goes toward fruits and vegetables. Regarding funding, each participating organization is eligible for reimbursement based on the number of meals served and a funding model of 10 cents per meal that includes local food. Applicants will have the option of requesting less than 100% of the grant amount awarded to them. And we know that starting a sustainable and successful local food procurement plan takes time, and sites are encouraged to start with what feels doable to them. And our grant reviewers will be on deck and on standby to support you with technical assistance, but to also think through what is a feasible capacity of local food funding to start with. And some reporting is required, and we're working to keep this process as simple as possible. But grantees must provide documentation of local food purchases to our team with Iowa State Extension every other month throughout the grant, and reimbursement will be processed bi-monthly. And we'll go over that a little bit more in detail here in a minute. And also a post-project evaluation will be completed in October 2021 after the procurement period. So who can apply? Only early care and education organizations that are participating in the CACFP qualify to participate at this time. So these organization types include child development homes, child care homes with a child care assistance agreement, independent centers, center sponsors. And note that center sponsors may apply on behalf of any number of their sites based upon interest. Here's our project timeline. So the online application will open on January 4th and we'll close it on January 31st. So you'll have about a full month to put together an application. Grant partners will release notice of awards in early to mid-February. And at that time, we'll plan to host another informational webinar for awardees once the notices are released to kind of go through the processes more in depth. And then April through September is the 6-month local procurement window. So within that 6-month period, that's when you'll be spending your grant funding on local foods. And in October 2021, the grant will close and a post-project survey will be shared with all grantees at that time. We are using a fair share funding model to equitably allocate grant funding. And here's what that looks like. We will approximate the number of local meals to be served. And we'll do this based on your October 2020 breakfast and lunch meal claims in Iowa CNP. We'll times that by 6 months of meals and multiply that by 10 cents per meal to determine your site's maximum grant award. And if your site didn't submit claims for October, we'll use the most recent month of meal claims in Iowa CNP. Then, if approved, a grant project lead will be in contact with you to determine the final award amount within this range that we're estimating of $50 being a very low end to $2,500 being toward the higher end. So that will again depend on enrollment and site capacity. So as an example here, this organization has 85 kids enrolled. We will use their October 2020 meals claimed, which is 3,340 meals. We'll multiply that by 6 months and then 10 cents to get a maximum grant award for them of $2,064. So this site can accept a maximum award of $2,064 from the grant to spend on local food. But if they don't think that they can spend that much in the 6-month procurement period, they can request a smaller amount. But we're thinking that that is the maximum grant award. And again, we have $43,000 that we'll be awarding using this funding model. So for reporting, Iowa State University and Extension and Outreach, will collect and process reimbursements for sites. Reimbursements will be processed and sent in 3 phases every other month in that 6-month procurement window in May, July, and September. Sites will be required to report the following information every other month for reimbursement. We'll ask you to submit photos or scans of any receipts from purchases within that 2-month period, and information related to the source from where you purchased the local food and the purchase itself. So what items did you purchase? Where did you purchase it from? Where's that provider located? The farmer, the food hub, the farmer's market. And how was it served? Which meals? Was it served in breakfast, lunch, supper, snack, a combination? Centers must revise their CACFP annual budget income to include awarded grant funding as other income, and expended grant dollars should also be reported in the monthly claim cost details. And this only applies to centers that will be participating. Again, after sending notice of awards for the grants, we'll host a short webinar to explain the electronic reporting process and make sure that that's really clear. And some additional documents like a W-9 or conflict of interest form may be requested on an individual basis as we work through a reimbursement process. So local procurement. We're asking that grantees purchase local produce, fruits and vegetables, protein, meaning meat and meat alternatives, dairy, excluding liquid milk, and grains. And again, 50% of your funds must be spent on local fruits and vegetables. So regarding local food sources and our definition of local, for this grant, local food is defined as food grown within the state of Iowa or within 30 miles of the border in another state. You can purchase local food from an individual farmer, a food hub, or a farmer's market. We're asking that sites do not purchase from major grocery stores or distributors, as we want this funding to really support our local food hubs, individual farmers, and farmers markets. And you must retain the receipt and or the invoice information complete with the grower's location on it. And this is what you will submit to Iowa State Extension every other month. Here's a list of allowable local food expenses. Allowable local food expenses include fruits and vegetables, meat, and meat must be processed in state or USDA inspected lockers, eggs, dry beans or other legumes, dairy, including yogurt, cheese, butter, and honey, which may not be served to children under 1 year of age. And non-allowable local food expenses include milk and grain-based desserts. So whether participating in this grant means that you'll be sourcing local food for the first time, or if it means that you'll be able to expand your farm to ECE work that you're already doing, there will be lots of resources and technical assistance to support you along the way. The Iowa Farm to School and Early Care Coalition website is a great resource to start and offers local food directories, CACFP menus with best practices for local procurement, and lots of food education and gardening resources, which go hand in hand with local procurement service. Grant leads will support sites in developing their local procurement plans and partnerships throughout the project. So these links within this slide, and we have several more at the end, you'll be able to access with these slides. They're clickable and they'll take you to those resources that I just mentioned. So now I'm going to hand it off to Krista Smith to review some frequently asked questions.
Hi, y'all. So glad that you joined us today. So basically, I am going to summarize here. Chelsea gave you a lot of information, and we know there's a lot to process. So essentially, I am going to hit some of the high points, and this is a good slide to really focus on if you want to get the whole picture. This next one, go ahead and switch, Chelsea. So look through these with me. These are the points that, like I said, these are really important points. So note these. CACFP participation is required. You do have to spend 50% of your funds on local fruits and vegetables. I think there was a question in the chat, can you spend 100% of it on fruits and vegetables? Yes, you can. 50% is the minimum amount to spend on fruits and vegetables. Liquid milk is not an allowable expense for this grant. Sites will be funded based on whatever the October 2020 meals were claimed through CACFP, but may use the funding in foods purchased in any combination of meals and snacks. If you have any questions about that, let us know, but we will have some samples of ways you can mix and match those. I believe we have those right on the application. So your local purchase information and receipts will need to be submitted every other month. You'll purchase from farmers markets, or food hubs. Those are the allowable places to purchase from. Participation requires completing a Go Knapsack Farm to ECE self-assessment and post-assessment. You'll do that self-assessment. That's sort of a pre, find out where you are, and then the post is going to be at the end of the grant period, so you can see how far you've come. Participating in this grant requires completing 2 hours of self-paced virtual Farm to ECE training. We will give you options of training that you can participate in once you receive the grant, and you will need a project survey in October of 2021. So those were all things that Chelsea talked about, but hitting the highlights there. So how does this program support you? There are so many benefits to incorporating local foods and Farm to ECE into your program, and all around health benefits abound as well. And as early childhood professionals, you know how impactful those first years of a child's life are. So if you look at these points that we have on the slide, physical health is promoted. Children become aware of and begin to develop nutritional habits that contribute to health. And you again, probably all know this, but food preferences are also developed in the first few years of a child's life. And those preferences persist into adulthood. So the foods that you're offering children in your child care now can impact their health their entire lives. It can impact the health of the families of the children in your child care. You can really make a difference through Farm to ECE activities and local food procurement. children begin to have knowledge about and make age-appropriate healthy choices. And again, the earlier they get those healthy choices established, the healthier they're going to be long-term. So you think of the ripples, you affect these children and their families can affect other people as well. So I think, Chelsea, you can switch. Now we're going to open it up to any questions, and anyone that has any questions, if you want to put it in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask aloud as well.
And I just want to reiterate, we went over that information pretty quickly, and I know some folks joined us a little bit late. So all of these slides that we have reviewed and the recording of the webinar will be sent out right after in case you missed anything.
And the partners that are actually watching the chat, if you saw any questions in there that you think you maybe need to call out and just draw everybody's attention to, feel free to do that as well, because I think that might be helpful.
Yes, good morning. If we grow our own garden, are we allowed to pay back any of the fruits and vegetables that we would be growing ourselves?
Yes, actually, Patty, you can, yes. What are the details on that, Patty?
As far as CACFP, you can claim those meals if you serve your own produce from your own garden. I think she's asking the question about these particular grant funds. Can they be used to support maybe like tomatoes, plants or some other items they grow?
I mean, I guess we never really addressed this, did we? We did? No?
No.
Chelsea, I'm looking at you. I'm going to just answer this and speak for everybody. And if you don't think I should answer this way, partners, then let me know. Or Patty, maybe you should just take this. But because CACFP allows that, I think that the grant funds would allow that as well. And isn't it a pound, like a per pound allowance? I think, is that right, Patty?
Well, in CACFP, you can claim, say, a meal that you're serving, a vegetable that you've grown, and still get a full claim for that meal. Gotcha. So there's never a dollar limit put on it. So that kind of might be the hard part with this grant.
But if we would pay ourselves back what the farmer's market is getting, would that be allowable? And if we can prove what farmer's market is charging for, let's say lettuce or tomatoes or green beans, that type of thing. Potatoes.
That's a very good question, and maybe we just need to kind of work through that, and we can put it out on the FAQs. I'm not sure, Chelsea, what do you think of an answer at this point, or should we?
I think it's a great idea, and as the grant is directing and supporting individual farmers, you yourself, maybe an individual farmer or gardener. So yeah, I think we just have to talk through maybe some of the reporting that would be required of that, and we will put out an answer with sending out all of these slides, and we'll add information about that to our
and pictures would be accountability. If we were taking pictures of everything that we were doing, that would be accountability.
Yeah.
It's a great question and suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, we will have a frequently asked questions page that we'll be sending out. We'll definitely get that on there. Thank you for asking that.
Another question that's come up is, I was not participating on the food program in October, or my claimed meals were not normal or realistic, and we understand that. And how would this work? So we could use a different month, maybe even a more recent month, like say January or November, or a different month that's a little more realistic to determine your maximum funding amount. So don't worry if your October numbers weren't normal.
there any other questions in the chat that we haven't answered?
There was a question about meat inspection, and if this grant could, if they purchase local meat and they take it to the local locker. But as far as I know, this grant is reimbursing for the local foods and not for the meat inspection process.
So it would be at their expense.
I believe so, yes. Right, Chelsea, Krista?
Yes.
You know what, I need to understand this a little bit better. So you're saying that if we got, let's say we had a cow donated to the center and we took it to the, and had it processed, that would be acceptable meat?
For CACFP, it's required to have USDA inspected meat or state inspected meat.
Right.
So if it's got the state inspection seal that it's been inspected by the state regulation, it would be acceptable to serve for CACFP. Yes.
Okay. So do you have any idea of these little local processing plants that we have around in our small communities? They probably would not be state inspected, or do you think they would be?
I know there are several that
Okay.
do have state inspected.
Okay. All right.
And we can look into that a little further, but.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to reiterate that too, so that meat, as long as it's inspected, would be acceptable, but the processing for that cow that's donated or whatever, you would be paying the processing.
And I may add, I would ask whoever you take it to before you do that to ask if they are meat inspected.
I actually have a little paper on my charges from our local locker, and the inspection fee is on the very top. So there's an additional charge if you get it inspected versus whether you choose to not get it inspected. It's not a lot of extra money. I don't know if you can see it on my paper, but it's like $15 for beef, $10 for pork. And in addition to the processing fees, which, you know, could be hundreds of dollars depending on the type of animal and the size. But anyway.
Thanks, Arlene.
Thank you, Arlene.
So maybe a lot of them offer it. They don't just automatically do it. You have to ask for it.
Jan just asked if we could provide a list of qualifying lockers. And I do think that's something we could probably get our hands on, send out with material. Sorry, I'm not on the team, but I know I've worked.
Great idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hattie, there are two questions. One, do home providers have to go through their sponsor for this grant? And two, would the grant have funding for sponsors to support the providers with this grant? So same question.
So the home providers do not have to go through their sponsor. You can apply individually as a home provider if you're participating in the food program. And the second question, Chelsea, was, can the home sponsor apply for their interested center sites? You could do that as a home sponsor, but the home providers can apply themselves individually.
Did we get all the chat questions?
I see another question. How can we be sure these numbers will be accurate? As I know for myself and my center, we have had many closures and individual classes closed due to being quarantined. So numbers from April sorry about the Christmas music in the background. My granddaughter's here. Up until now are going to be much lower, and I assume for everyone. And that's a really good point. And we understand the months as of late due to the pandemic have been very different. So we will work with you to get a more realistic look at your enrollment numbers and that type of thing. Hopefully, maybe even by January, February, maybe things will be a little more normal and we could use those numbers.
Tracy asked, can the sponsors apply to take food out to providers?
I guess I wonder if you're talking about grab and go during the pandemic or meals, you know, provided. And yes, any way that you are claiming those CACFP meals would qualify as local foods being served in those meals. I think that's what your question was. If not, please speak up.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was just asking if we could apply and then take foods out to the providers that maybe won't be able to apply for this grant due to maybe language issues or language barriers. Okay. If that would be an eligible expense.
I think yes, as long as they're participating in the food program, yes. And we can kind of work with you. We want to be sensitive to all the different situations out there right now, and we'll definitely work with you on that.
Yeah, we do understand that this is such a strange time in our history. We want to be able to support you however we can, through COVID too, to help you work through, how much would be allowable and whatever, which Patty mentioned that, but we do understand that offering this at a time where there's a lot of unknown.
And I see the question about, will this video be available afterwards to share with my providers? And it absolutely will. And I do see a lot of home sponsors on today, which is great. And we know that those home providers are caring for their children right now. So if you could share this information, that would be wonderful.
All right, unless there are any last minute questions, Chelsea, go ahead and move to the next slide. Fine. So these are the other resources that Chelsea was mentioning. If you weren't on to hear this before, we are sending all the slides out, and these are clickable links, so you can just click right on them and it'll take you to the resource. You can also contact any one of us that are on this call, which I believe our information is at the end as well. If you have any questions, follow-up questions, we will be happy to answer those or find the answers for you. So yeah, there is our contact information, and we thank you so much for being on this call. We know it's a lot of information, so once you get a chance to review the slides, if you still have questions, please reach out and contact any one of us. We are happy to help. That's what we're here for, and wish you the best of luck in just this pandemic. Crazy time.
We may want to remind them that about the application being probably posted the 1st of January, but not received until the 4th of January. Can you actually, is that correct, Chelsea?
Yep. We have information online on our Iowa State Extension Farm Food and Enterprise Development website. And at this webpage, there are 3 resources, one about the program, 2 frequently asked questions where that information we reviewed today, and then a 3rd resource called about the application that summarizes everything that will be asked in the application, which will be live January 4th. So check those out, and it'll give a good overview.
And that, thanks for going back to that resource page too. If you're wondering what you can serve local food wise and to be able to write menus for that, the CACFP menu with best practices, which is on the Department of Education website, is an excellent resource for that, to give you some ideas of how you can incorporate local foods into your menus.
And I just want to follow up with one last question. I think some sponsors are asking if they can apply on behalf of their providers. And it's really set up that the home providers can apply directly themselves, and the grant funds will be paid directly to that home provider. But home sponsors, if they, can apply for their center sites, those that are interested. I hope that helps.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. Have wonderful holidays.